tech support for your soul. This is the Daniel Natal Show. As a sort of anthropologist, I thought it might be an interesting exercise to report on the news from this day, a year ago. It might be revealing to put things into some perspective in retrospect, to sift through the artifacts like a displaced time traveler trying to make sense of this particular time in human history. We begin this look back on this date in 2020 by drawing attention to Gavin Newsom's executive order N3320. I, Gavin Newsom, Governor of the State of California, in accordance with the authority vested in me by the state constitution and statutes of the State of California, and in particular, Government Code Sections 8567, 8627, and 8665, do hereby issue the following order to become effective immediately. It is hereby ordered that to preserve the public health and safety, and to ensure the healthcare delivery system is capable of serving all, and prioritizing those at the highest risk and vulnerability, all residents are directed to immediately heed the current state public health directives, which I ordered the Department of Public Health to develop for the current statewide status of COVID-19. On that date 1 year ago, he goes on, of course, to outline his protocols to deal with the pandemic, like wearing masks for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Good thing it's only for 2 weeks, right? A look back at PBS on the same day shows much the same coverage conducing toward conditioning the public regarding the new normal.
Good evening, I'm Judy Woodruff on the NewsHour tonight. On the rise, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the U.S. tops 11,000 as the government looks to $1 trillion in aid to stem the economic toll. Then, after panicked shoppers leave many grocery shelves bare, what you need to know about the food supply in a time of crisis.
Note how they were using their platform to create panic and induce artificial shortages. Kind of reminds you of the famous newsman Walter Cronkite's axiom that the media is not there to reflect public opinion, it's there to shape it. The media is, of course, a powerful tool to channel people in particular directions, like Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show in 1973 triggering a toilet paper shortage because of a prank.
Of all the shortages we have, there's a gasoline shortage. You know what else is disappearing from the supermarket shelves? Toilet paper. Ha, you can laugh now. There is an acute shortage of toilet paper in the good old United States. We gotta quit writing on it.
CBS News reported on it decades later, writing, "The false alarm sent Carson's audience of almost 20 million running. As noted in the Great Toilet Paper Scare, one woman said, 'I'm used to being able to go when I want to, but suddenly I think I'm going to have to start curbing my habits.'" Gersten said, "People all over the country stormed supermarkets, grabbed as much toilet paper as they possibly could." And then Carson issued a clarification of sorts. "For all my life in entertainment, I don't want to be remembered as the man who created a false toilet paper scare. Apparently, there is no shortage." This is just good to remember since decades later, last year in 2020, we had the media replicating that stunt by sending news people out to remove products from shelves to stage a crisis, when one didn't actually exist. Such as this person noticed, writing, "MSM in my town pulled down an entire shelf of goods so that they can present the news of people buying stuff in a hysteria over the coronavirus." Citizen journalists all around the country have documented similar tactics in their cities, highlighting the media's penchant for triggering panics that they want to cover. Instead of reporting the news, they're creating it. The powers that be were inspired in this methodology by Orson Welles' famous 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast, where a fake radio play about Martians invading the Earth triggered mass hysteria, with people shooting at water towers thinking it was landing alien scout ships. Welles himself said that he was shocked at the fact that the general public assumed that if something appeared in mass media, it must be true. He said that before mass media, people were more skeptical. They might read something in the paper, but they take it with a grain of salt. But with the advent of moving pictures and radio, they uncritically believed anything that was broadcast. The assumption, and a false assumption, was that if it appeared in mass media, it had to be vetted. It had to be true. Almost immediately, professional experts in propaganda began to salivate over exploiting this Achilles heel in the public to drive political change by the use of terror. I think there's a word for that. H.L. Mencken wrote more than 100 years ago that the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed, and hence clamors to be led to safety, by an endless series of hobgoblins, most of them imaginary. In Stuart Ewan's book, PR, A Social History of Spin, he writes about how propaganda godfather Edward Bernays was approached by the American government to help mount a public relations campaign to allay fears after the advent of the atomic bomb. Bernays said no. You have to do the opposite. Exaggerate the dangers, he said. A scared populace is easier to rule. And he was right. Scientific studies have been done to establish that when someone is terrified, hormones are released in the body that create a fight or flight response. This channels energy away from the brain to the limbs, so you literally become dumber under the influence of panic. This is why it's good to occasionally peek back into the past and see if there are any lessons we can learn from what we find there, whether all the way back to the War of the Worlds or even to events that were taking place on this day a year ago. The further we look back into the past, the longer we can look ahead into the future and accurately predict what will happen based on the established pattern. Two historians, Neil Howe and William Strauss, wrote a famous book called The Fourth Turning. It frames history not in linear terms, but in cycles. They use the metaphor of the 4 seasons which recur every year. Likewise, there are 4 historical cycles that generally happen as societies rise and fall. According to them, back in 1997, this generation would represent a 4th turning into a new historical period, the winter phase. Intriguingly, back in 1997, they wrote, "A spark will ignite a new mood. The CDC announced the spread of a new communicable virus. Congress enacts mandatory quarantine measures. Mayors resist. Urban gangs battle suburban militias. Calls mount for the president to declare martial law." Their foresight is simply intriguing. From the vantage point of 1997, they accurately seem to predict the world of 2021. According to them, we're in a period of unraveling, of social destabilization. It aligns with historian Peter Turchin's claim that 2020 initiated what he called the Age of Discord, a 50-year cycle of violence that is very similar to what Howe and Strauss describe. All 3 historians talk about how after social destabilization, people will ultimately begin to demand more order and a return to more sensible values. But first, the storm. Pretty crazy stuff, I know. I know you probably don't want it to get too crazy. Me even reporting on this is adding to the sense of craziness, I know. So we have to establish a safe word, dear viewer. That way, if things go sideways, you can yell it, and the madness will stop. Our safe word will be Joe Biden.
As I said in my inaugural address, we will repair our alliances, engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges. American leadership must meet this new authoritarianism, including the growing ambitions of...
Could reading the New American magazine boost your heart health, support your immune system, and help you lose 20 pounds of unsightly fat? The answer is no. But you should read it anyway. It'll keep you informed and provide information that cuts through the noise of lesser news outlets. TheNewAmerican.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us on social media and hit that like button.